Tremendous. Okay, here we are in the latest episode of the 21 Futures podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Jillian Godsil. Jillian, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. We worked together, as you reminded me, some time ago. So it's great to reconnect.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, crypto is a particularly small place, still, amazingly, after all these years. Lots of young whippersnappers running around, but
And some old ones.
all of us OGs know each other, right? It's a real pleasure, and it was such a delight for me to learn about your prolific fiction writing. So before we get into that, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay. Um, Me as a person or me as a writer?
Well, one could argue these are the same thing.
Hmm. They probably are. Well, the very, very short version is that I'm Irish, as you can tell from my accent. I started off, went to Trinity College, did history and English, and my first job was at JP Morgan in London, systems analyst. And then I was a very bad programmer. So I moved into fintech PR, as it was called, for many years in Sydney and Singapore and London a bit, and then back to Ireland. And then bought a big house, moved to the country with my English husband and our two children, and lived happily ever after.
Amazing. Amazing.
But didn't happen. Didn't happen. We got divorced. He went back
Oh,
to the UK. I was left with the house and the debt and our two children. And basically, things went very much belly up for me then. And there's a
okay.
reason for me to say this because the people's entry into crypto, there's different reasons.
Yeah.
And this will explain mine. Anyway, I was there. Everything was crumbling around my ears, life, universe, business, my house. And I got a cash offer. So I made a video to sell the house. It became viral. I became viral. And I got a video to sell the house, but the bank refused consent to sell it because the mortgage was larger than the asking price because of the crash in the market.
Hmm.
Anyway, they repossessed the home and sold it for a tenth of its value because of the crash. And I'm there. I was forced into bankruptcy, and along that route, I became very activated and very angry because there was this sort of narrative that people were somehow gaming the system, and the banks
Right.
were good and proper, and people were bad and whatever. And I went, that's not right. That's a bit
Yeah.
crazy.
That's
And
backwards.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so I became an accidental activist, and I was made documentaries about me. Crazy. I was in all the papers online. I was in the Huffington Post, the New York Times, and I was on Russian TV and Belgian TV. Crazy stuff. And anyway, as part of all that, I realised that we had inherited in Ireland UK law that as a bankrupt you weren't allowed to run for public office. That's how Jeffrey Archer had to resign from his seat when he wasn't moved into bankruptcy. So from the Conservative Party. Anyway, I went, this is ridiculous, I said. So I brought the Irish government to the High Court and the Supreme Court, and I said that my constitutional rights have been infringed. I changed the law, and then I ran in the 2014 European parliamentary elections as an independent against the banks. And I had no money. I didn't even have a car. I had to borrow a car from a friend. And at the end of the day, I got 11,500 votes, for which I was delighted.
Nice.
Not enough to get elected, but enough to make a difference. And
Mm.
it also, that process that I went through, which I wouldn't really recommend to anybody, but it was an interesting time. In hindsight, it taught me a lot about money. It taught me a
Yeah.
lot about what is money, and I began to question things. So when I eventually ran into blockchain and Bitcoin properly in 2016, 2017, I went, aha, this is how I changed the world. So when you ask me who am I as a writer, as a person, I jumped into this space, and I was because I was so keen to help make a difference this way. I ended up traveling the world and chairing conferences and speaking and stuff and writing for publications. So that's kind of what got me into crypto and blockchain. It was because people say you joined for the philosophy, the technology, or the money, and I definitely joined for the philosophy.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that's so nice about this project that we're both a part of now is we do remember the sort of cypherpunk ideology of decentralization,
Oh,
privacy
totally.
first, individual freedom and liberty. And it is very interesting when I know quite a bit about precious metals, gold and silver, and you sort of think, is Bitcoin eating gold's lunch? Is it going to eat gold's lunch? Are young people going to be buying ounces of gold, or are they going to be stacking sats? Which is really,
The
really
latter.
interesting, right? Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, of course, you can do both. You can diversify. But yeah, that's amazing. What an amazing story as well. I mean, I doubt many people could say that's exactly how how they kind of fell into crypto. I
Well,
mean,
do you know what I liked is I came in for the philosophy. That's definitely why I came in because I thought there has to be a better way. Because I never had a library ticket. The next minute I'm busted and I'm in bankrupt and I'm all this kind of crazy stuff that was happening. This is weird. How can this be happening? But then I love the tech, because the tech is really interesting. I'm fintech a long time, but it took me ages to get my head around the tech. That was just going, how does this work? How, it took a long while for me to make that jump. And then the last thing is the money. And I'm not a trader, and I didn't buy lots of Bitcoin. I didn't do that. But
Hmm.
I do know that in this industry, because you mentioned the cyberpunk sort of philosophy, is that I used to hate the greed is good and the dog eat dog and the zero sum game that I was surrounded by in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. Hated it. Didn't like it, never liked it before I knew anything about Bitcoin and blockchain and crypto. And I love the idea that everybody can win. So,
Hmm.
that I can be successful, but your children can be successful. My children can be successful. I don't want to penalize somebody just to make to make a living for myself. And I also know in my advanced years, I don't need several cars, several houses. I need to live in one house and drive
Sure,
one car
sure.
and do ordinary. I mean, I'm not yeah. It's but it's nice to know that I can do well, that which I couldn't have done if I'd stayed in that old industry with that old mindset.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I was always told being a writer was a road to sort of misery and financial ruin. And
Well, it's taken me a long time to start making money as a writer. That's for sure. Because people say, "Oh, you can write, and we'll expose you. You will give you promotion." I'm going. You don't say that to your plumber. Oh, come and fix my toilet, and I'll tell all my neighbors what a good plumber you are. No, you don't. You expect hard cash. So it's a very difficult industry to be in, to actually to achieve your worth, have people recognize your worth and pay you for your time.
sure, sure, yeah. I do think that opportunity is out there and it's growing, though, right? There's a lot of fear in the markets, as always, but if we choose to be hopeful and look for those opportunities, it's possible to find them, you know. And I was at a crypto event in London last night, and they were talking about remembering the coin scrum days with Paul Gordon and wanting to bring that back. And there was a young lad pouring pints behind the bar, and I sort of said, "So what do you want to do?" And he said, "Well, I want to be a journalist." And I said, "Good.
Ah,
Here's how you do it. Here's how you
yeah.
get started. Talk to the people in this room as you pour
Mm,
them your pints, you know." But
mm,
you're right. Like, we can all benefit, we can all win, and I suspect, like myself, you're often asked by people who don't know much about crypto or the movement, and they say, "Can you explain it to me like I'm five?" You know, or how my grand could get a crypto wallet. And what's amazing is you can anyone can earn Bitcoin for free right now today, just rolling faucets, right, and things like that. And people have no idea about any of these things. But what I am most sort of grateful for is that intersection between, okay, I've got a skill around writing, yes, but also it's a hobby and a vocation. It's something I love to do and would do for free. But the fact that you can create a career around that, you can be fully remote, work from home, no commute, meet really amazing people. It's a very good time, I think, and it's going
mm,
to be an exciting year and an exciting future for people in the space and people who are new, just coming to the space now. And one of the things we're so keen to do with 21 Futures is kind of onboard people a little bit through, instead of tech necessarily, a bit more what you were talking about, some of the ideology, some of the stories that we can tell. And we've just got 21 incredible stories. So let's talk a little bit about what inspired you to write such an excellent and also very funny story. Your story is deeply funny. It
mm.
was a real pleasure to read, and there was like, oh, how do I describe it? There's like an element of kind of naughtiness to it that was. Would you agree? Is that fair to
I
say?
agree. No, I agree. And we were laughing earlier before you pressed the record button how I wrote erotica to try and save my house from the banks back in 2014. A trilogy, no less.
Oh
But
yes.
yeah, I mean, and I also said I'm not going to be writing any more erotica, thank you. But I like being a little bit naughty in my writing, and being suggestive. I mean, I did full on graphic erotic. It's porn actually, word porn. Sorry, but
Okay. Yeah.
shocking stuff. But I like to be more. It's kind of fun. It's yeah. And do you know what's funny? After I wrote the trilogy, I was invited a lot because I did it under a pseudonym originally, and then sure I said, "Oh, for goodness' sake, we're all grown ups here." And so I was asked around when the first 50 Shades film came out. I was
Oh
asked to
yes.
write articles in the main pillar press here in Ireland, and I did. It was all about sex positivity and blah blah blah. So it was just yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, writing's a creative thing, telling stories is a creative thing. It should be fun, right? Nobody should be looking at that empty page and feeling terror and feeling frightened. But it is interesting how different people react in different ways to the same thing. You know, you tell them write a story of 3,000 words, and some people that's their Everest. And for me,
Mm.
I'm thinking, well, I could do that twice a day, every day. Um,
Ooh,
and
I'm
that's
very
okay.
impressed.
Well, no, it's just I think from a long time working in it, right? You learn a process that gives you an output and a productivity, but then to have the opportunity to write something fun and get people laughing, because your story, you know, to talk about it without too many spoilers, there's kind of this ticking clock element. There's you know, a clever sort of narrative device, a bit like the boiler in The Shining. We know the boiler's going to blow up. It's a ticking clock. Yours is, you know, these people have been abandoned on Mars, right? And no help is coming. And what do? They dance, and it's beautiful. And you've kind of really nicely juxtaposed the horror of the situation with the humor of the situation, and it was
Wow.
just fantastic to for us to sort of read it, dissect it, talk about it, and we thought this is absolutely, you know, a game-changing submission. So can you
You
tell
are
us?
very kind. Let me say thank you very much.
Oh,
Sorry,
you're welcome.
but you're so getting me now. You can have whatever you want. I'm a writer. Once I get a compliment, I'm anybody's.
So could you tell us, was that a story you'd been thinking about for a while, or was it fresh to respond to the prompt, or what inspired it, do you think?
It's the prompt. And actually, funnily enough, more recently, I've joined a writing group in my local town here where I live in Ireland. And we do prompts every time we meet. It's a very good practice to do
Hmm.
because otherwise, I mean, I write extensively. I write thousands of words for my
Yep.
work, which I really
Yep.
enjoy doing. And I tend to write more feature style than I'm not doing like news per se. I like to write fully rounded pieces. But the prompt, and I have a couple of stories floating around in my head, and I've got a possible full novel that I'm thinking about taking parts of. But just
Okay.
as also say write 3,000 words, that's quite nice. You just write and then you stop, and you know you have to get there before that's quite a good practice. It's like when you do it in it with our group, you have like 15 minutes, and you're there furiously writing because you know you have to do it in 15 minutes, whatever the piece that you do is. In the same way, having that limit and having the theme it was a very broad theme. And I
Yes.
just thought, and I hadn't written. I've written once before. I'd written an historic dystopian, or it
Hmm.
could be a future like the what do you call it, the road,
Oh
Cormac,
yeah,
Cormac
Cormac
McCarthy. There
McCarthy.
was something,
Yep.
yeah, something along those lines before. So I was like, future or past, hard to know, but it sort of felt like the past. Whereas this one here, I think it was just that I liked some of the ideas of her choosing her career,
Yes.
and then just the
That.
just the little rebel thing. I just thought, and the way she turned her foot, I thought, oh, she's a dancer. That's how she's a dancer. I've no idea if she was a dancer before or ever after, really. She's liked her, to
Yeah.
shake her booty, maybe.
You wait until you see the artwork that's been done for your story, because I suspect you
Wow.
haven't seen it yet.
No,
But you'll be
no.
able to. It's we've had some really amazing artwork created for each of the stories, and yours
It's
is
exciting.
breathtaking. Yeah, yeah, it's very very cool. So you mentioned a bit about dystopia there. So is dystopia an interest of yours, or is it just one of
Well,
many interests?
do you know what the thing that I need to write next? And I haven't quite got the time sorted in my head, but if that story is part of it, and I want to put in like that, I want to put in COVID. COVID
Hmm.
is totally dystopian. I mean, my
Yep,
God, look back on it
agree.
now. It's
Yep.
weird. And we lived through it. It's like living through World War II or three upcoming.
Hmm.
Who knows? But so I want to do something along those lines and take people out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
So what would you do? It's like they say, I was talking to somebody recently about, I think it was some test. I don't know whether it was a fake one or not, but they put people in uniforms and people not in uniforms, and they encouraged them to be aggressive to the people who weren't in the uniforms. And I don't know, as long that someone almost got killed at the end because they upped the ante each time. And it's like when you're out of your normal, what do you do? So that interests me. So it doesn't have to be necessarily dystopian, but you put
Sure.
somebody in a
Sure.
different country, and maybe they haven't got access to the the supports that normally guide them, the rail guards that normally guide them. So I quite like that idea about what would you do if you didn't have to do what you were meant to do.
Right, right. So in
Mhm.
writer school, I think we'd have called that sort of the uncanny valley. You know, you got to go into
Ah,
the other and get a bit uncomfortable. right? And dystopia, myself and Phil, the other editor, we've been talking about that in the time we've been working on this, we've gone from talking about the future dystopia to the dystopia of today.
Yeah.
It's actually
Oh my goodness.
arrived as we've been doing this.
Well,
Um,
only yesterday, you probably were following that the Irish Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, was in the Oval Office for the annual St. Patrick's Day presentation of the Shamrocks. Now, it was a week early, but notwithstanding, the whole country was like, we'd held our breath because we thought, will he do to Ireland what he did to Ukraine and Zelensky? We emerged relatively unscathed. But that everyone was talking about how would the Taoiseach get out unscathed? How would Ireland get out unscathed? Now, there'd be loads of things coming down the road, but just for that one day. But that's weird. How would you ever think that would be part of our normal dialogue?
yeah, I mean, I didn't have any of this stuff on my bingo card, right? But I think one of the hugest things that, in a way, is positive for the Bitcoin movement, even though it's horribly negative for the world. Do you know the Canadian trucker protests when they froze the bank
Mm,
accounts? And then
yeah.
they realized actually we can use Bitcoin. And that was a bit of a sort of orange pill moment for a lot of people. But some of us have been looking at this for a much longer period of time. And even if you read the Bitcoin white paper, right, it was all about getting away from the sort of banking trap that had been created. And unfortunately, even whilst we move our own ideology of what's acceptable away from centralized control, there's then this massive sort of globalist, elitist, over overarching push from, oh, actually, you don't have any right to privacy at all because you
Which
signed the
is mad.
terms and conditions, right? Because you bought your iPhone and you didn't read the thing and you signed it. And you just think, wow, we've traded actual freedom and liberty for perceived safety and perceived convenience. So it's not
Mm.
a fair trade because the convenience and the safety is only perceived in a lot of cases, right? Facial recognition cameras, are they to keep you safe or are they to, well, how do you prove it? And
Mm.
I just think some of these, some of the stories in the collection are very dark. They're very dark indeed. And we did think, can we get little bits of hope into some of these stories? And what I like about yours so much is kind of like a yes but answer to that question. Like, yes, there's a bit of hope in that we can have a laugh before we die.
I was going to say, I think mine didn't end on a very good note.
Well, exactly. But the attitude that the characters had and the
Oh,
way they embraced.
she's not a mooning Minnie, that's for sure. She's.
Right, and
Mm,
there's real power in that. There's real strength in that. I
mm,
find it very moving, actually. I'm very lucky to have been involved in this and read some of these wonderful stories. Because I remember thinking every one of these writers needs to write a novel. You're all ready. If you haven't done it, I know you have, but some of them
well, oh no, I have to
haven't.
write my proper novel, not my erotica.
Oh, well, erotica's proper, isn't it? It
Mm.
must be these days. It must be. Well, look, if you ever want to talk about novels, we can talk about that. I've done a bunch, but we're not here to talk about me. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that we've got this sort of quite wide group of writers. We've got some really established novelists like DJ Bodden, who's a tremendous writer. And then we have people who have just for the first time had a short story published. And then I suspect, those of us who work professionally as writers are somewhere in the middle, right? We're probably
Mm.
going, well, I'd really like to finish my country music album or do another novel. Would you have any advice for writers? And that could be general or it could be specific. It could be specifically about writing in the crypto space, or it could just be about how you get started.
Well, I do know that in my professional day job, writing for in crypto is great because people pay you.
Yes.
And I was tired of being a freelancer.
Hmm.
Oh, we'll pay you for promotion. Tired of that. Although I love writing, it's my joy, and I do write for the Irish Times and the Indo here as well in Ireland. But and I remember going to the freelance forum where the chap who runs it, he's totally anti-crypto. I'm not allowed to speak about crypto. Hilarious. I'm trying to
Oh,
see all
wow.
the young kids that are there. If you want to get paid for your work, whether it's copywriting, website writing,
Hmm.
press release writing, there's money in this space and there's appetite. So please consider this and it's also it's your brain is on steroids the whole time because of the change and understand stuff and just the
Yep. Yep.
ideas. It's beautiful. And then the other piece of advice that I'm actually finally taking myself is that I've joined a local writing group, and I hadn't done for a while. I was in a bit of flux through different things. And the writing group is great. Very mixed bunch of people, very mixed styles, very mixed standards. But we do prompts every week, and that forces you to write. And they also say, write with your pen and paper, not switch on your laptop, because
Yep.
that's something in the brain that sort of kickstarts. And that has led me. Oh, I was laughing. I was showing you earlier. I wrote a poem in there, and then I published it. So this is with my writers group. It's called Code, a poem by Jillian Godsil and many poets. And I got AI to translate my poem into various different styles, from Gerard Manley Hopkins to James Joyce. And the
Yeah.
results are fascinating. So that
Oh
was a bit of fun.
yes.
But the advice going back, definitely try to find some place where you get paid, because it's a pain in
Mhm.
the bottom to write and not get paid. And it's wrong.
Yep.
And secondly, if you're doing pretty creative writing, join a group, because I found that it's very helpful for me this year.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. You don't necessarily have to go and get an expensive university education and get into loads of debt. You can just find people that did that and then steal their knowledge through groups, which is
Mm.
well, no, I'm joking, I'm joking. But yes, you're absolutely right in surrounding yourself with sort of like-minded individuals, but who do have different styles. Style in writing, I think, is a lot like style in music. Style is just how you make mistakes, right, and how you torture and break convention. It's one of my favorite things about being a writer, is seeing how people break stuff. It's really fun. So yeah, I'm completely on board with what you're saying, and I'd love to ask as well, because some writers are a little nervous about AI. Some of us are a bit more embracing of it. Do you have any thoughts on AI for writing? Is it a useful tool?
I think in terms of creative, although that was a creative exercise I did, that was really interesting. My poem, and then it duplicated. No, did it change it? It created these other versions, which were like, whoa,
Hmm.
that's a thing that I've done. But I think with creative, it's not necessarily going to be helpful, because it's all that original. What makes a human being a human being? For
Yeah.
work, I find it very handy. For minutes, for reports, it's
Hmm.
just as fast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can preparation. I can say, read, like how lawyers do. Read this white paper. Now tell me what are the most important points. And actually, though, funnily enough, I did an interview earlier today, and I got some questions based on white papers. And when I did the interview, I didn't use any of them. They weren't
Okay.
pertinent. So you
Mm.
have to use your own knowledge, because when the guy started talking, I went, these are not, even though that they read really, really well. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And then I threw them away. I used the first one, and after that, I changed it totally, because it didn't. So you have to be very, well, intelligent, I suppose, with the use of AI. I think AI is not. I know everybody in my write script, they go, ooh, get it away from me. I'm going, well, if you work with words, it can be very helpful. It's like saying
Yes,
you use a horse and cart or use a car, you know.
of
But
course.
it's kind of like that kind of analogy. But I do think you have to use your brains with it. What you're using, not just because apart from the hallucinations, like these articles, these points that raise, I'm going, not really, kind of like vague, and it's kind of like, I thought at the time they were great points, but they were useless. Like I say, I threw it away. And then also, I think you have to be aware of your voice, who you are, what you're
Yeah.
doing, and that's why
Yeah.
I changed. I looked at that, and thought, no, that's not me, and I grilled the poor man instead. I said, tell me more about this. I want to know about that, and what are you doing there, and why is that not happening? And it'll be a much more interesting article than that one.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I mean, I used to work a lot in data, and there is a saying in data, garbage in, garbage out,
Yeah.
and it's the same with AI, right? You've got to know how to prompt it, you've got to know how to use it. But yeah,
Mm.
we love an analogy.
Well,
Mathematicians had an abacus and then a calculator, right? It's
yeah,
just an
and
upgrade, isn't it?
and I wouldn't have written my story from AI. That's for sure. There's
No.
no way. Even that, I could have given it a gazillion prompts, and I still wouldn't have come up with that quirkiness and the humor, as you said so kindly, and just that little, there's no way. Even the way I had sex in there, for God's sake. I must be obsessed with sex,
into
and
into
I had fun.
species sex as well, I believe,
Yeah,
right?
it was, and
Ooh.
it wasn't. It was very tastefully done, I have to say that. It sounded very nice, actually.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, the alien character was my favorite, actually.
mm,
Um,
I liked him too.
yeah, I'd love to. You should do a whole set of stories or novel in that universe. You could do a prequel, I think, maybe. Uh,
Could.
Fantastic. Um, what was I had a really pertinent point I was going to make about AI that's now gone. Oh yeah, right. So AI lacks a soul, right? It
I think so,
lacks
but it
what
may
makes us
gain
human.
one in time. I don't know. Right now, it doesn't have one.
I don't see how it ever could.
I don't
And
know.
I'd be dreadfully frightened if it sort of did.
Mm,
When we used to judge short story competitions, and you could spot an AI written one a mile off, right? And funnily enough, there are now AIs that seek out and destroy other AIs and identify AI stuff and flag it up. And you think, wow, we've created monsters to destroy monsters, but it's always going to need a human pilot because it's not
mm,
intelligent in the way we think it is. It's learned to recognize more patterns. That's all it is, right? It's more and more patterns are being put into it that it's recognizing and then starting to predict. But it's not this kind of Skynet, Terminator, evil stuff yet. Who knows?
no, yeah.
Who knows?
Well, I mean,
Give it
I
time.
do find it helps me in my work because
Yes.
I'm able to uh, get reports, get highlights, things that would take me a while. Just to take me physically a while, I can still do it. It's not that it's smarter than me, but it's just the speed. I'm going,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
summarize that meeting, please, and do me minutes. And I mightn't agree with the minutes, but it's enough for me to go, okay, that's good. No, that's missed the point there. And I find that very helpful. Like having a very smart assistant.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's free.
Mm.
Awesome.
Well, no, I actually pay for mine because I use it a lot.
Oh, okay.
I
Which
ran out
one
of
have you
prompts.
got?
Oh, just a chat GPT one.
Oh, the
But
GPT, yeah.
I was running out of prompts, so I thought, oh, I need to.
I just did a fun exercise for the Konsensus Network blog, actually, the 21 Futures blog, and we asked different AIs to have a little go at writing a sci-fi dystopian story, and
Oh,
they were pretty mostly bad.
okay. Oh,
One
good,
one was
good. I'm glad.
one was quite interesting, and the AI actually remembered its own previous story and then continued it a different
Oh, that's
time.
unusual. Most AI doesn't have memories.
Yeah,
Not
right. So
yet.
the Google one, Gemini,
Yeah.
remembered its own story and continued it, and I
Mm.
was like, that is really interesting. um,
Oh,
but yes, look, Jillian, I could talk to you about this all day, and I love speaking to you. But what I want to know, what is next for you? Where can people find you? People can read your story when the book
mm.
launches imminently, possibly by the time this episode is published, it will already be out, which is very exciting. But would you tell us a little bit about if people wanted to connect with you or learn more about you and your work?
Totally. Can I ask a question before we
Oh,
finalize?
of course, yeah.
How many women are in the anthology?
That is an excellent question. So, as a result of some pseudonyms that are used,
Ah, we don't know.
I do not actually know for definite. I suspect it is mostly men.
Mm. The topic and yeah, the.
The space is a little male heavy,
No, just
absolutely.
curious. No, no,
But
sorry, I beg your pardon. I just
there
fired
are
it at you.
multiple women in the project and as part of the team working on the project.
Mm,
One
mm.
thing I suggest you could do to help find out the answer to that question would be we have a tremendous Telegram group, the 21 Futures group. If you have Telegram,
I'm
come.
actually in it. I'm in it.
Oh
Yeah, I just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
haven't looked
Um,
recently.
so that there'll be some
Ask.
there'll be some nice ladies in there to speak to. Absolutely.
Mm. No, no, just
Um,
curious because I know I went on a call and it was all men at the time on the call. But anyway, so if you're going to find me, LinkedIn is very handy. Jillian
LinkedIn, yeah.
Godsil. I think I'm the only Jillian Godsil in the world. I think we've decided
Oh,
that's
congrats.
soon. And then because I'm a journalist, I use my name. I'm fully doxed, and also Twitter is quite good as well. So
Yes.
LinkedIn,
Okay.
start a conversation, or
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah. And then are we going to hear more about a novel from you in the future?
Yes, because I am. This is the year. As I enter my 7th decade, someone said, "Does that sound better than you're 60?" I'm not quite sure which. 7 is only single digits. 60. No. Yes, that's the next thing on my list. Is I need to, and I'm trying to figure out. I've got a couple of storylines in my head, and I might go back to this one. I might go back to this one.
Yeah. Well, that's
Mm,
exciting. There's
mm,
a lot of
mm.
opportunity there. And enjoy it, right? It's meant to be fun. We're meant to love
Yes,
writing and
yes.
keep that humor and that naughtiness about it because
Well,
it's
do you know what's funny? When I wrote my erotica, I remember people would ask the maddest questions. Someone said, "Do you have to get turned on to write erotica?" I'm going, "Well, yeah, you do, because otherwise it's going to be bang, bang. Otherwise, it's an AI person writing whatever." But then I remember countering it, saying, "If I write a nice tweet, so like it's only the 150 characters, whatever it is now, and it's really nice. I could reread that about 10 times. Go, oh, that's nice. That's nice. So just the act of putting one word in front of the other excites me. So it doesn't have to
Yes,
be
yes.
erotic. I like my writing. I kind of go, oh, I like that. Oh, that's
There
nice.
is a huge market for it. There is a really wonderful writer of erotica who posted a very funny joke on Twitter, and I'm going to tell the joke now, and I don't know if it's too on the nose or not, but we can always edit it out later. But she said, "I write erotica, but in it the women orgasm, so it's actually fantasy."
Yes, that is very true. Very
Yes,
true.
yes.
Yeah, that's
That's
funny.
too funny, isn't it?
Mm.
I love
Mm.
it. It's so important to laugh and have a good time with what we're doing, not take anything too serious. There's an irreverence to the freedom that comes with being involved in this stuff, and that's one of my favorite things. I will never
Yeah.
be particularly serious. I will
Mm.
always be up for a beer and some banter and a laugh. So that's a good point. Next time you're at a London crypto event, let me know, and we'll grab a
I
beer.
will. I will.
But
I'll be there at the. Oh, it's. I'll be there in June for sure, if not before.
Tremendous. Well, it'll be upon us very soon. So,
Mm.
on that note, I would like to say thank you so much, Jillian. It's been a real pleasure having you on and talking to you. And well done again on the story, because I'm not going to keep telling you how brilliant it
Oh, no, you
was.
can. You can tell me again how much you liked it. I
So,
will never tire of hearing how much you liked my story. Never.
Daria's Dancing Emporium by Jillian Godsil, coming soon in 21 Futures Financial Fallout. And I do hope when we do future collections, not that we've confirmed any, but wait for it. I do hope you'll think about contributing some more in the future as well.
I definitely will.
Amazing, amazing. All right. Well, you have a wonderful day, and it was a real pleasure
Thank
to
you.
talk
It's
to
been
you.
a pleasure. And thank
Cheers.
you for all the compliments. Can we just keep on talking about the compliments?
No.
No.
You
Darn it.
take care, Jillian. Thank you.
Thank you.